Nancy, pardon my hair, I washed it this morning. Can't do a thing with it. Okay, anyway. Sorry. Okay, today we're going to deep dive into this government shutdown business. I'm hearing this person's blaming this person, this person's blaming this person, this person's blaming this person. Who knows what's going on? And some people are beginning to think present company excluded. I am neither here nor there, but I do not believe this government shutdown can be blamed on President Mr. Trump, because it takes two to tango. It takes two to tango. Okay. Now, okay, let's dig into this. So, I'm sorry, I got that song from my opening stuck in my head. I like that song. Okay, so there's no way to enlarge this. Okay, so let me see. Style. Okay, I don't know how to enlarge that. So I've got the default camera on the largest it'll go on. Okay. So here we are. All right. So it says federal government shutdown, what it means for states and programs. Okay, let me read you something. Oh, shoot. Okay, on my phone. It might be on, no, I don't have email on my other phone. Okay, let me read it on here. Okay. It says, can you see? You can't see. Right there. It says, save SNAP. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey urges the federal government to fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, threatened by the ongoing government shutdown at a press conference in Boston, Massachusetts, October 24, 2025. Attorney General and governors from 25 Democrat-led states, 25 Democrat, yes!
Bye.
Bye, have a good night.
I always do.
Thank you, bye. Love you. We found the truck keys. Somehow, we don't know how, because there's only 3 people in this house currently. And CJ was the last one to drive the truck. But the keys and the seats of the truck was still pulled all the way up into his position. but the keys got down in the basement
I
on
promise
Butch's
I
desk.
didn't steal them. I put them where he went.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. And somehow when Butch came home, I'm not going to blame Butch for this because it's not Butch's fault. When I left at 3:30 in the morning to go pick Butch up Saturday morning, our kitten Church went out the door with me, which he does all the time. He always goes outside. He goes out, comes in, goes out, comes in. Both my cats have free run in and out. So Church went out with me that morning, but I haven't seen him since. We don't know where he's at. So here it is, Tuesday afternoon, and we still haven't seen Church. So anyway, so it says attorneys general and governors from 25 Democrat states filed a lawsuit on October 28th in an attempt to force Mr. Trump administration to fund the nation's largest food aid program benefits aimed amid the federal government shutdown. The suit filed in federal court in Boston comes after the U.S. Department of Agriculture said it can't use contingency funds to pay for the SNAP program, commonly known as food stamps. About 42 million Americans rely on the federal program, which provides low-income families monthly benefits to afford healthy food. The lawsuit argues suspending SNAP benefits is avoidable, arbitrary, and is being carried out in violation of the Food and Nutrition Act, which requires that assistance under this program shall be furnished to all eligible households. Millions of Americans are about to go hungry because the federal government has chosen to withhold food assistance it is legally obligated to provide. New York Attorney General Letitia James said in a statement, the plaintiffs, led by the Attorneys General of Massachusetts, California, Arizona, Minnesota, the District of Columbia, have asked that the judge move rapidly to force the USDA to use available contingency funds for November SNAP benefits and assure that millions of families do not lose access to food assistance in the coming days. Why the USDA says it can't use contingency funds for SNAP. The federal government shut down on October 1st after Congress failed to agree on funding allocations for the 2026 fiscal year. The USDA issued a shutdown contingency plan which said the reserve of contingency funds could be used to pay benefits directly. But the agency warned SNAP and the Special Supplement Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC, were in jeopardy, and the plan was ultimately removed from the website. Bottom line, the well has run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st. The agency said in a message on its website that pointed blame at Democratic lawmakers for the shutdown. In a letter shared with USA Today, the USA Today said the contingency money is available only to supplement regular monthly benefits when amounts have been appropriated for but are insufficient to cover benefits. The contingency fund is not available to supply FY 2026 regular benefits because the appropriation for regular benefits no longer exists, the letter says. But the lawsuit says this claim runs contrary to the plain text of the Congressional Appropriation Law, which states that the reserves are for use in such amount at such times as may become necessary to carry out program operations under the Food and Nutrition Act 2008. California Attorney General Rob Bonta said at a news conference that I just got another email about the same thing I'm reading right now. That the plaintiffs believe the USDA has access to up to $6 billion in contingency funds and possibly more to fund SNAP, which would be enough to cover the cost of benefits for November. What would they do about December and January and February? All they have to do is spend that money that is there for the purpose, Bonta said, but they're not. But Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins estimated SNAP benefits for November would cost more than $9 billion. We don't even have close to that in the contingency funding, Rollins said in a Tuesday afternoon interview on CNA. Okay, in my opinion, due to the fact that WIC will be stopped, and WIC can only be used for the babies and the children up to 5 years old, I believe that the contingency money should be used to fund the WIC program for the children, because some children can't have their formula, and at $60 a can, the mothers would not be on WIC if they could afford $60 every 2 or 3 days to feed their child. I'm sorry, the WIC program needs to be covered, in my opinion. That is this reporter's opinion. During the shutdown, Rollins said the department has spent money to open FSA officers for farmers as well as pay food and safety inspectors while also maintaining the SNAP program in October, she said, downplayed the previous USD guidance that said contingency money would be available in the event that the lapse occurs in the middle of a fiscal year as an iterative document. The SNAP program in November cost $9.2 billion, Rollins said. We don't have the legal authority as of today to distribute anything less than that through the formulas, etc. We're obviously looking at all of this as we move forward. Impact of SNAP cuts will be catastrophic, officials warn. DC Attorney General Brian L. Schwab said in a statement, if the cuts are allowed to go through, the adverse effects on public health, education, and public safety will be immediate, catastrophic, and irreparable. But what about school food? What about the funding to pay for school breakfasts and lunch? Is that available? I'm wondering. Okay. Benitez said states have been left to clean up the federal government's mess, processing applications knowing applicants won't receive benefits and funneling resources to already strained food banks. Cruelty is the policy. That's what this is about, California Governor Gavin Newsom said at an October 28 news conference. Its initial cruelty intentionally created anxiety for millions of people. Okay. So basically, they're saying that the SNAP, the money is not there. Okay, so that was the email that I received right before coming live. So I wanted to read that, and then we'll go on to reading this one from the federal government shutdown, what it means for state programs. key department and agency impacts. Easily browse the critical components of this report. Let me see what it says. Oh, yeah, okay, we don't want that. Okay. The U.S. federal government shutdown, on October 1st, after lawmakers failed to resolve a budget deadlock, halting some federal operations and putting approximately 750,000 employees on unpaid leave, triggered by partisan clashes over funding beyond September 30th. The shutdown has created uncertainty for many federal programs. Okay, one being the military. The military, from what I read in another article this morning, the military are not being paid. And pilots, air traffic control pilots, are having to work without a paycheck. So we'll get there in a minute. Triggering bipartisan clashes over funding beyond September 30th, the shutdown has created uncertainty for many federal programs. How will the shutdown impact federal funds to states? It's complicated. It's a complicated answer. During a government shutdown, the administration retains limited spending flexibility by prioritizing funding for programs that the president deems essential for public safety or national security, such as military operations or emergency services. Agencies may also reallocate available funds to maintain critical operations, providing those actions comply with the Anti-Deficiency Act and other legal constraints. Agencies published presidential priorities in their contingency plans in the event of a shutdown. Below are some highlights informed by the party federal funds informed information for states, FFIS, of how aspects of various contingency plans may impact states. Discretionary programs. No new funding is available for most discretionary grant programs. However, exceptions do exist. Federal highway funding can largely continue as contract authority is available for 2026, according to the federal funds information for states FFIS, as it relates to K-12 education. Title I and IDEA funds should see limited impact as those awards have already been made for the 25-26 school year. Thank goodness. Thank goodness our students will not go hungry because there's no money to feed them at school. And I do believe, at least here in Augusta, I know that our school lunch people would probably do the best they could to make sure, even if they only had a bologna sandwich, to make sure they had something for lunch. And I'm sure several other schools and states in the country would do the same. Okay. The authorization for the state and local cybersecurity grant program also expired on September 30th. See Department of Homeland Security below. Mandatory programs. No new funding is available for most mandatory programs funded through the annual appropriations process. However, for certain programs, funds for the first quarter of the federal fiscal year 2026 were included in the full year continuing appropriations for Extension Act 2025. And let's see if we can tell what that is. Representative Tom Cole, House of Representatives, introduction, the full year. This bill provides continuing FY 2025 appropriations for federal agencies and extends various expiring programs and authorities. Specifically, the bill provides continuing FY 2025 appropriations to federal agency for the remainder of 2025. It is known as the continuing resolution and prevents a government shutdown that would otherwise occur if the 2025 appropriations bills have not been enacted when the existing credits expires on March 14th, 2025. The CR funds most programs and activities at the 2024 levels. It also includes several additional provisions that increase or decrease funding for various programs compared to FY 2024 levels. In addition, the bill extends several expiring programs and authorities, including several public health, Medicare, and Medicaid authorities and programs. The National Food Insurance Program, Flood Insurance, authorities related to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission Whistleblower Program. So they're going to fund whistleblowers, but they're not going to fund SNAP. Okay, that makes no sense to me. You want a tattletale in there, but you don't want to feed the tattletale. Okay. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, National Cybersecurity Program System, authorities for DHS and the Department of Justice to take certain actions in mitigate to credible threat from the unnamed aircraft systems. The Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF program. Okay, they have money for TANF, but they don't have money for SNAP. Okay. Several immigration-related programs and authorities. The Special Assessment on non-indigenous persons or entities convicted of certain offenses involving sexual abuse or human trafficking. Okay. So they're not going to harm the Native Americans, but they will continue to send out the illegal immigrants. Okay. The temporary scheduling order issued by the Drug Enforcement Administration to place fentanyl-related substances in Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substance Act. The authorization for the U.S. Parole Commissions and the Department of Agriculture Livestock Mandatory Price Reporting Program. Okay, that's what the full year continuing appropriations for Extension Act 2025 is. States may also have access to and be able to use carryover funds. Historically, states are reimbursed for costs incurred under these programs once a new spending bill is enacted. Funding will continue for mandatory programs that are currently authorized and not subject to the annual appropriations process. This includes programs such as the Children's Health Insurance Program. However, the authorizations for several programs, community health centers, and temporary assistance for needy families, for example, expired September 30th. Okay, so TANF is not available either. That's not what we just read, but that's what this says. So no new funding is available for those programs. In addition, Medicare flexibilities regarding telehealth and AccuCare hospital at-home initiatives also expired September 30th. See Department of Health and Human Services below. Federal employees. Under the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019, page PL 116-1. Furloughed employees are required to receive retroactive pay once the government reopens. Okay, so the military is not going to get paid, but when the government reopens, they'll be paid back to the shutdown. Retroactive. Okay. Office of the Management and Budget Director Russell Vaught released a memo last week directing federal agency to use this opportunity to consider reduction in force notices for all employees in programs, projects, or activities, PPAs, that satisfy all three of the following conditions. Discretionary funding lapses in October 2025. Another source of funding, such as HR-1 public law, is not currently available. And 3, the PPA is not consistent with the president's priorities. The length of shutdown. The unpredictable length of the shutdown adds another layer of complexity. As noted, some programs can continue to operate at least for a period of time due to receiving advanced funding or having access to carryover funds, while others are unable. The impact of the shutdown on federal funds to states will depend on the duration, as extended shutdowns bring greater uncertainty. For those details on how the shutdown impacts specific programs, legislators and legislative staff who subscribe to FFIS have access to a shutdown Q&A. Tracking the shutdown, key department and agencies. Okay, this is what we've been talking about. Okay. And the link to that site is in the description below if anybody is interested in going and reading all those blue highlighted sections. Okay? Now we're going to go to the Bipartisan Policy Center. And find out who is missing paychecks in 2025 shutdown, when and where. Update Friday, October 24th, 2025. On the October 1st, the U.S. federal government shut down due to a lapse in appropriations during this current shutdown. At least 670,000 federal employees are furloughed, while roughly 730,000 continue to work without pay. 1.3 million active duty personnel and over 750,000 National Guard and Reserve personnel are also required to serve, potentially without pay. The first pay date with zero pay for some federal workers occurred on October 24th. Now, some military families, their only insurance for their family is paid for through their military pay. So if the pay for the insurance cannot be paid because the employee cannot receive a check, does the family lose their insurance? Because what happens if a family member is fighting cancer? Will their insurance no longer cover them because their military husband isn't getting a paycheck to cover the insurance? Some people need to think about this. Some people need to think about this. Okay, hold on. This just in. No, that's not it. Well, something just came up. Wait, maybe it's here. Here it is. Newsbreak headlines. Washington KFLY Senate Republicans, including Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican LA, have introduced legislation that would reinstate supplemental nutrition assistance program benefits during the government shutdown. Cassidy joins Senators Josh Hawley, representative of Missouri, the bill's author, James Lakerford, representative of Oklahoma, Lisa Murkowski, representative Republican. I'm sorry. These are all Republicans. Josh Hawley is Republican of Missouri. James Langford is Republican Oklahoma. Lisa Murkowski is Republican Alaska. Susan Collins is Republican Maine. Marsha Blackburn is Republican Tennessee. Bernie Moreno is Republican Ohio. Kevin Kramer, Republican North Dakota. Katie Boyd Britt, Republican Alabama. John Cornyn, Republican Texas. And John Husted, Republican Ohio, are pushing the U.S. Senate to vote on Keep SNAP Funds Act. The bill is the companion to a SNAP funding bill in the House introduced by Representative Marionette Miller Meeks, Republican of Iowa, on Friday. The Keep SNAP Fund Act would ensure full funding for the SNAP program during the government shutdown. Under the bill, Congress would appropriate the necessary funding to provide uninterrupted SNAP benefits retroactive to the start of the shutdown, according to Cassidy. KFLY Daily Digest, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, said in a memo Friday it won't use the SNAP contingency funding. We already read that. But they're trying to get, the Republicans are now trying to get a bill to pass to allow SNAP funding to go through. Whoops. And I believe that that would be a very good thing to do. I'm all for it. Mind you, I do not receive SNAP benefits. I would not neither benefit nor be, unless they stop over-the-road truck drivers from running, which I doubt they'll ever do. But because even during the COVID shutdown, over-the-road truck drivers were what were necessary employees, just like medical staff in the Army. Without over-the-road truck drivers, we don't get our food from one side of the country. I mean, so there's no way, in as far as I can tell, that my family will be interrupted because of the shutdown. And I'm sorry to the people that are. What I'm saying is, I'm not pro, I'm not con. I believe that the people that need the SNAP program should have the SNAP program. The people that need the WIC program should have the WIC program. Schools should have their food funding. It should be all there. And TANF is needs for families, like if the father walked away and the mother is or vice versa. If the mother walked away and the father is a single parent and they file for TANF, that money comes out of the other parent's income. It's like a mandatory child support, okay? And if a judge requires you pay child support, you can receive child support on top of a TANF, okay? So At least that's the way it was back when my kids were babies. Okay, so the first pay date with zero pay for federal workers occurred October 24th. October 31st may be the first time in history that members of all military branches will miss a paycheck due to a government shutdown. The Trump administration reallocated $8 billion to cover active duty military pay for October 15th payday. If the shutdown continues through December 1st, roughly 4.5 million paychecks will have been withheld from federal civilian employees, representing approximately $21 billion in missing wages. Congress has yet to enact full year appropriations bill or a continuing resolution to fund programs that operate on annual spending plans, which represent approximately 1/4 of government operations. As a result, the federal government has entered the shutdown. This means that federal agencies are required by law to cease non-critical activities and furlough non-essential employees. Thank goodness over-the-road truck drivers, nurses, and doctors are all essential employees. Until lawmakers reach a resolution. While some expected federal employees and nearly all military personnel remain on duty, they will not receive paychecks unless they are funded outside of annual appropriations. Exempt employees, those whose pay is funded outside of the annual appropriations process, continue working and are paid. Missed paychecks hurt not only individuals, but also the communities that depend on them. This explainer highlights the specific timing of missed paychecks as well as which region of the U.S. are most impacted. When will federal employees miss their first paycheck? You mean the people living in the White House? Depending on their specific pay date, civilian federal employees receive partial paychecks on October 10th, 14th, or 16th. Variation depends on the government's various payroll processing systems. However, because of the last federal pay period ended on October 4th and includes work days after the shutdown began on October 1st, these paychecks were missing 3 days worth of pay for employees who aren't funded outside of normal appropriations, regardless of whether that employee was furloughed or required to work. Civilian employees at the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, the Department of Veteran Affairs, and Executive Office of the President, and the few other agencies experienced their first fully missed paycheck on October 24th. The remainder of federal agencies will miss their first paycheck on October 28th or October 30th, depending on the agency and payroll processing system. If the shutdown lasts until December 1st, nearly 4.5 million paychecks will be withheld from civilian employees of federal agencies. A portion of that figure represents the lost wage equivalents of paychecks partially withheld during the first pay period impacted by the shutdown. Based on PBC workforce estimates and the Treasury Department's daily Treasury statements, we estimate the average federal paycheck for fiscal year 2025 at roughly $4,700, meaning withheld wages could total approximately $21 billion if the shutdown lasts through Thanksgiving. Data for differences in pay between funded and unfunded workers are unavailable, which would influence the exact total. Our estimates are for withheld paychecks and total withheld pay both exclude 70,000 DHS agents from the October 14th and 28th pay period. Cumulative missing paychecks. See, it just goes up and up and up and up. And this is just like October, November, December. It just keeps going up. And I believe in my heart, like it might happen the way it did during our president, Mr. Trump's first term, when he said his paycheck would go to fund something. I don't remember what it was, but he did the first year of his first term with no paycheck. I believe our president, Mr. Trump, would do something of the same to help make sure that people have the food and necessities that they need. Okay. When will military personnel miss their first paychecks? Active duty military personnel, as well as some reserve personnel and members of the National Guard, are paid on the day after the immediately preceding pay period. Unlike civilians, the military is paid not biweekly, but twice a month. Service members were paid for the end of September on October 1st, and active duty members were paid on October 15th, through a reallocation of other funding. If the shutdown continues through December 1st, nearly 5.5 million paychecks would potentially be withheld from members of the armed forces, assuming additional money is not reallocated due to the nature of drilling schedules for National Guardsmen and reserves. It is difficult to know exactly if they are paid at the midpoint or the end of the month for completing their training, leading to some ambiguity in this estimate. Total active duty military pay is $4.0 billion at the midpoint of the month and $4.8 billion at the end of the month, according to daily Treasury statements. This means that active duty pay alone represents $13.6 billion in wages through December 1st. And that's what it shows there. Where do the federal civilians workforce live? Although the Washington metro area has the highest concentration of federal workers in the U.S., the vast majority of the federal workforce is stationed outside of the District of Columbia region. Many of these federal workers are involved in the direct support of local communities. For example, the Department of Agricultural Farm Service agencies operate approximately 2,000 county support offices and help farmers access insurance, capital, and other programs necessary for farming. Currently, 67% of Farm Service agencies workers are furloughed. The Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, works in 95 offices across the country and keep nearly 8 million work sites in compliance. Currently, 72% of OSHA's workforce is furloughed. For more insight on impacts across the country, see BPC's explainer on federal programs during the shutdown. In total, the Congressional Budget Office estimates that as many as 750,000 workers may be furloughed at a cost of $400 million per day in missed pay as of October 24th. Available agency contingency plans show closer to 670,000 workers currently furloughed. Based on BPC's analysis of agency contingency plans, approximately 730,000 additional federal employees are currently working without pay. That's in this region here and in the darker regions here and Alaska. How the shutdown impacts military pay. Although this isn't the first shutdown that the U.S. military has experienced, which is true, because every time something happens in the government, the military gets their pay gets cut off. I don't understand why the military is hit first when, if it wasn't for the military and the men and women who have put their lives on the line to serve for us, we would not have the freedom that we have today. So I do not understand why they are the first to be cut. I don't understand it. Okay. Although this isn't the first shutdown that the military has experienced historically, Congress has passed laws continuing military pay during. Man, I thought I was going to make it through without yawning. Okay, I got a lot to read. Okay, so the Trump administration announced on October 11th that $8 billion would be reallocated to cover military pay for the first paycheck. Daily Treasury statements show $4 billion was paid to active duty troops on October 15th. So at least some of them still have their money. Okay. If you want to read the rest of that about the military, the link to that is in my description. Okay, now we're going to get to the meat and bread of this subject. This is from October 22nd, 2025. Who is more responsible for the government shutdown? Voters blame Republicans slightly more than Democrats. Quinnipiac University, I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry. National poll finds Mr. Trump numbers spike on handling of Israel-Humans conflict hit new low on economy. 22 days into a government shutdown after Congress hit a budget impasse, 45% of registered voters think Republicans in Congress are more responsible for the government shutdown, while 39% think Democrats in Congress are more responsible, and 11% volunteered that they think both parties are equally responsible, according to Quinnipiac, that's what I said, University National Poll of Registered Voters released on the 22nd, okay? Democrats and Republicans hold each other's party more responsible for the government shutdown. Among independents, 48% think Republicans in Congress are more responsible, while 32% think Democrats in Congress are more responsible, and 14% volunteered that they think both parties are equally responsible. I do think both parties are equally responsible because it takes two to tango. If one side wasn't disagreeing with the other side on what needs to be done, if left hand isn't disagreeing with right hand and right hand isn't disagreeing with left hand, both hands are responsible. 26% of voters approve of the way Democrats in Congress are handling their job, while 67% disapprove and 7% did not offer an opinion. This compares to Quinnipiac University July 16 poll when 19% of voters approved of the way the Democrats in Congress were handling their job. 72% disapproved and 10% did not offer an opinion. 35% of voters approve of the way Republicans in Congress are handling their job, while 59% disapprove and 6% did not offer an opinion. This compares to Quinnipiac University poll July 16, when 33% approved of the way Republicans in Congress were handling their job, 62% were disapproved, and 5% did not offer an opinion. Control of the House of Representatives. If the congressional midterm elections were held today, 50% of voters say they would see the Democrat Party win control of the United States House of Representatives, while 41% say they want to see the Republican Party win control. Democrats and Republicans would overwhelmingly want to see their respective parties win control of the House. Among independent, 52% say they would want to see the Democratic Party win control of the House, while 32% say they would want to see the Republican Party win the House, and 16% did not offer an opinion. That 16%, 48, still would not, if they all went Republican, it still would not make it Republican over Democrat. President Trump, 40% of voters approve the way Mr. Donald Trump is handling his job as president, while 54% disapprove. This compares to Quinnipiac University's September 24 poll, when 38% approve and 54% disapprove. I approve of Mr. Donald Trump. And I'm not going to say who's right and who's wrong. It's not my place to say. Israel-Hamas conflict. When it comes to President Mr. Trump's handling of the Israel-Hamas conflict, 47% approve while 41% disapprove, with 11% not offering an opinion. Okay, now I don't have any idea what the Israel-Hamas conflict is. I haven't been keeping up with that, and I'm not going to read all this. Trump handling of issues. In addition to Trump's handling of the Israel-Hamas conflict, voters were asked about his handling of 3 other issues. The military, 43% approve while 52% disapprove, with 5% not offering the opinion. The economy, 38% approve while 57% disapprove, with 5% not offering an opinion. The Russian-Ukraine war, 36% approve while 54% disapprove, with 10% not offering an opinion. This is the lowest score for Mr. Trump's handling of the economy since February 2017, after he took office, when the Quinnipiac University poll began asking the questions. Trump's handling of the economy reaches its previous low of 39% approval among voters 4 times since 2017. Most recently in September 24, 2025 poll, when 39% of voters approved of Mr. Trump's handling of the economy, 56% disapproved, and 5% did not offer an opinion. With nearly 20-point gap between approval and disapproval on the President Mr. Trump's handling of the economy, it's a low watermark for a president who promised a vibrant and muscular economy. I do believe that Mr. Donald Trump is doing what he can do. I think so. He does have to deal with Republicans coming at him for one thing, even though he's a Republican president. And he has to deal with Democrats coming at him for other things. So he has to deal with both sides. So he's doing the best that he can, in this reporter's opinion. Some people may disagree with me, and you have every right to. That's your right. I'm not going to say you're right or you're wrong in how you feel about the government and what's going on right now, because who knows? We won't know until the end of the shutdown. Trump administration uses taxpayer dollars to blame Democrat for government shutdown. The radical left in Congress shut down the government. HUD will use available resources to help Americans in need. The Trump administration is Does this have to do with Charlie Kirk? Does any of this have to do with what happened to Mr. Charlie Kirk? I don't know. I have to think on that one. The Trump administration is blaming Democrats for the government shutdown in internal federal agency communications, as well as public agency websites in what experts say could be a violation of federal ethics laws. A bright red banner and pop-up message first appeared Tuesday on the Department of Housing and Urban Development website. It was updated early Wednesday morning and warns the radical left in Congress shut down the government. HUD will use available resources to help Americans in need. Wednesday morning, a banner added to the top of Department of Justice website reads, Democrats have shut down the government, with a link to its own shutdown plans. Also, on Wednesday morning, employees at the Small Business Administration were provided suggested language to include in their out-of-office automatic replies, mirroring the partisan accusations made by the OMB before the shutdown. In an email blast to the entire agency, the SBA suggests employees write that I am out of office for the foreseeable future because Senate Democrats voted to block a clean federal funding bill, leading to a government shutdown, and that as soon as the shutdown is over, we are prepared to immediately return to the record-breaking services we are providing under the leadership of the Trump administration, according to a screenshot shared with NPR. I'm out of brown gravy. Should I add a packet of onion soup mix to my shepherd's pie instead? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But don't add the amount of water that it says. Otherwise, you're going to end up with soup. Okay. They're out of office. I'm out of gravy. There you go. So rob Peter to pay Paul with your gravy, which is what the government is suggesting be done. The Republicans are suggesting that we rob Peter to pay Paul and make sure everybody has food and necessities during the month of November, which I agree with, in my opinion. I'm not saying everything's right. Trust me, I do not agree with everything. I don't think that the government should have shut down at all. They should have found another way to handle their action. Put their big boy pants on and deal with it, or take it out in the alley. Okay? You know, staffers at multiple agencies and cabinet departments received emails on Tuesday from the White House Office of Management and Budget. Many shared screenshots of those emails with NPR or confirmed the text on the message they received. The messages said in any lapse in government funding would be forced by congressional Democrats. President Mr. Trump opposes a government shutdown and strongly supports the enactment of H.R. 5371, which is a clean continuing resolution to fund the government through November 21st, and already passed the U.S. House of Representatives. The message says, unfortunately, what I think is crazy is whoever came in and donated the $100 million or whatever it was to make sure that the military had a paycheck didn't even have enough to make it to where every person may possibly get $100. That's true. That's true. You have a point there. Unfortunately, Democrats are blocking the continuing resolution in the U.S. Senate due to unrelated policy demands. If congressional Democrats maintain their current posture and refuse to pass a clean continuing resolution to keep the government funded before midnight on September 30th, 2025, federal appropriated funding will lapse. Okay, so that's what happened. We know what happened. We know that because the government shut down on October 1st, that this was not passed on September 30th, 2025. We know that. Okay, the message continues. The agency has contingency plans in place for executing an orderly shutdown of activities that would be affected by any lapse in appropriate forces by congressional Democrats. Similar messages were received by staff at the Departments of Interior, Commerce, Labor, State, Treasury, Justice, Agriculture, and Health and Human Services, the Social Security Administration, the General Services Administration, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Securities and Exchanges Commission, the Office of Personnel Management, and the National Labor Relations Board, according to screenshots shared with NPR. Republicans control both chambers of Congress, but need Democrat support in the Senate to approve any government funding deal. The statement from the Department of Veteran Affairs also used sharply bipartisan language, saying radical liberals in Congress would be to blame for services not being available during a shutdown, such as career counseling activities and the closure of regional benefits offices. Radical liberals in Congress are trying to shut down the government to achieve their crazy fantasy of open borders, transgender for everybody, and men competing in women's sports. VA Press Secretary Pete Kasparowicz said in a statement to the media, if they succeed, they will stop critical veterans care and assistance programs. Health care for veterans will not be affected in the VA's contingency plan. Notes that about 79% of the employees will not be furloughed. Okay, so I may need my moderator to explain this to us. Are they saying, where's it at? Radical liberals in Congress are trying to shut down the government to achieve their crazy fantasy of open borders. So they want the wall taken down and let anybody in that wants to come in willy-nilly, whether they be criminal or not. Okay. They want everybody to be able to be transgender. And men competing in women's sports. That means if we go to women's basketball, Muhammad Ali can play on the women's basketball team because they want men to be able to compete on women's basketball teams. And this is their reason for the shutdown. Am I correct, Manda Panda? Is this their reasoning for the shutdown? Is because they want every person in the country to be transgender? Is that what it says? Transgender for everybody. I don't agree with that. God only made two people, men and women. Hold, please. Let me get a veteran. Hold. Here comes my support. Okay, this says radical liberals in Congress are trying to shut down the government to achieve their crazy fantasy of open borders. So they want to let everybody in willy-nilly, take the wall down, right?
Yeah.
Transgender for everybody. They want everybody in the United States to be transgender.
Well, those that want to be transgender, yeah.
And men competing in women's sports. So Muhammad Ali could go and play on the women's basketball team.
Right. Men playing in women's sports, giving them an unfair advantage.
That's what the Democrats want.
Right. The liberals and most Democrats, yeah. Not all Democrats.
I don't think that's right. I don't think I agree with that.
I don't agree with it in the slightest freaking bit.
Okay, thank you. Is that why we are shut down? That's what it says.
I think the actual reason, well, I mean, the shutdown is based upon money. The Democrats and the liberals have probably blocked some legislation from going through, and which causes, the government not to be refunded again. So, I mean, it's government shutdowns is a huge. There's a lot that goes into a government shutdown, but it all revolves around money and politics. It's simply what the Democrats want, what the Republicans want.
She agrees. No one has any money. That's right. No one has money.
Mm-mm.
We are living paycheck to paycheck, and the government's cutting out a lot of people's paychecks. I'm thankful you're an essential worker.
Yeah.
But look at Bill.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people, in the government and stuff, it's based on the government doesn't have any money. I mean, I don't even know what the national deficit is, but we're in the trillions in debt. The government has no money, and the only money that the government gets, they get it, they steal it from us because they blow all their money on programs like transgender bullshit and all this other crap. They fund all of that bullshit instead of taking care of what the actual government needs.
Amanda Panda says, no, the government has no money right now. That's why they're not in office. They
Right.
can't agree on who to rob to be able to pay who.
Essentially, yes. Essentially, that's exactly right. They can't figure out they've got to do something to refund the government for another year, in which being trillions in debt, they're not going to be able to do that. They can't get the money from us, so they have to steal from Peter to pay Paul.
That's what Amanda Panda's doing with her gravy, because she's out of brown gravy and wondering if she should put onion soup mix in the shepherd's pie instead.
So add a little bit of flour to it and thicken it up, it'd probably be all right.
She was asking a government question using gravy.
Well,
She's smart like that. Will you close the door, please?
yeah.
So I don't interrupt your TV. Okay, alarm bells for ethic experts. The inclusion of overtly political messages in federal agency communications raised immediately alarm bells for some federal workers and ethic experts. They said it could violate the Hatch Act. What's that? Let's find out. The Hatch Act overview, a federal passed 1939 limits certain political activities of federal employees as well as some state, DC, and local government employees who work in connection with federally funded programs. The law's purposes are to ensure that federal programs are administered in a nonpartisan fashion to protect federal employees from political coercion in the workplace and to ensure that federal employees are advanced based on merit, not based on political affiliation. Okay. So, which prohibits civil servants in the executive branch from engaging in most political activities inside federal buildings or while on duty. Wait, they said it could violate the Hatch Act, which prohibits civil services in the executive branch from engaging in political activity while inside federal buildings. So does that mean that President Mr. Trump's civil servants cannot act as his guard while inside the White House? This correspondence from federal government officials could be considered a violation of the Hatch Act. Michael Fallings, the partner, and Tully Rinke, an employment law firm, said in a statement, the Hatch Act prohibits engaging in political activity while on official capacity, including communications that contains advocacy in oppositions to the political party. Here, while the reference to Democrats alone likely does not constitute a violation, the explicit blaming of the Democratic Party for the shutdown and reference of radical left may constitute a violation. They can be there, but not a part of any decision. Gotcha. Okay. So next, we're going to go to Politico. This is a lot of reading on this one. I'm sorry. I opened way too many windows. I may have to cut this and finish the second half of it tomorrow. Hey, that's where my husband works. Those are essential employees. Okay, so here we go. Government agencies are blaming the shutdown on Democrats. Ethics experts say it could be against the law. Area closed, do not enter or remain under penalty of prosecution. Isn't that the Lincoln Monument? You can't go inside on the White House property. I guess civilians can't go there. Agencies across the federal government are explicitly blaming Democrats for the government shutdown. From banners on the top of public websites to suggested out-of-office messages for federal employees, can't go into any museums. That stinks. Does that mean we cannot go? This would not be the time for me to go see the Statue of Liberty, because I wouldn't be able to go up. Government shutdown shuts down everything. Yep. Agencies across the federal government are explicitly blaming Democrats for the government shutdown, from banners on top of public websites to suggest out-of-office messages for federal employees in an unusually overt show of partisan messaging that some ethics experts say may violate federal law. The deluge of statements bashing Democrats began hours before the shutdown, Tuesday, with the Signal Red pop-up posted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development website. The radical left are going to shut down the government, the page read. Now, that was before the shutdown, so it wasn't against the law. So, by Wednesday morning, handfuls of other agencies had already followed suit. I learned that the first government shutdown, when Gary and I went into White Sands, New Mexico, and we couldn't go to any of the museums. That stinks. Because that means that if I went to Hutchinson, or I took my whole family to Hutchinson, we could not go underground into the salt museum, into the salt mines and museum. That stinks. I'm glad we have blue skies. I want to go ghost hunting in Oil Hill tonight. Okay, anyway. Democrats have shut down the government, reads a banner. lighting the top of Department of Justice's website. Okay, we already read this on the other page, most of it. Okay, next we are going to CBS News. I wish some of these would actually put up a video, but we're not seeing any videos today. I'm sorry. Been raining for a dang week here too, but it's been windier than who'd have thought it. And now I can see blue in between the curtains up there above my monitor. Government shutdown. Live updates as Senate fails to advance GOP funding bill for the 13th time. What do we know on day 28 of the government shutdown? The Senate failed to advance a Republican-backed funding bill to end the government shutdown for the 13th time. The final vote was 54 to 45, falling short of the 60 votes needed to move forward. No new Democrats voted in favor of advancing. After lunch with Senate Republicans at the Capitol, Vice President J.D. Vance said the Trump administration has found a way to pay members of the military this Friday, but did not provide details. 25 states and the District of Columbia filed suit against the Trump administration over its plans to withhold food aid under the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, arguing the law requires the government to provide funds for November. Benefits for 42 million Americans are due to run out on Saturday without more funding. Sorry, I'm going to switch pages here. Something just popped up on my screen. Oh, here it is. New Hampshire lawmakers advance contingency plan for emergency food assistance benefits. Let's listen to this. Let me turn on some music here. My thing is, I understand them shutting it down, but what about the people that have been keeping them and they have benefits that I've rolled over from other months? They say that they won't even have. Right. You mean people that didn't use all their food stamps last month, they won't be able to use them this month either? Is that what you're saying? They won't be able to use the card after the first. Yeah. See, I don't think that's right, because if you still have funds available, you should be able to use it, in my opinion. Okay, let's listen. Can I make it bigger?
At U-Haul, we know every family moves at their own pace.
Hi, Mom.
It's starting to snow. That's why we have U-Box. We can store it or ship it.
Thanks, you've been lifesavers.
How and when you want it. Reserve today at uhaul.com.
The government shutdown means time and money are running out for SNAP, the state's federally funded food assistance program. Lawmakers are advancing a contingency plan to spend $2 million to help local communities through the New Hampshire Food Bank's mobile pantry program.
This is a Band-Aid. I mean, obviously, it's not a one-for-one. We're hopeful that this will carry us through the month of November.
The state normally gets more than $12 million a month for SNAP to assist nearly 75,000 households across New Hampshire. This stopgap state spending needs to be approved by the Executive Council on Wednesday, and then officials say it will take about a week to get the mobile pantry effort up and running.
Well, it's great the governor's forward-looking for our New Hampshire citizens. Taking care of our SNAP recipients are real important.
State Senator Tim Lang says this can only be a temporary fix.
So I'd encourage our federal delegation to vote for the budget and move this thing forward.
Democrats say this situation could have been avoided.
The Trump administration could use the reserves that are designated exactly for this program, SNAP, and they're not.
House Democratic leader Alexis Simpson contends the governor's office could be doing more to help.
Governor Ayotte talks about having a direct line to the Trump administration, and right now she really needs to pick up the phone and call her friends in Washington and make sure that the Republicans and the government shut down.
In response, Governor Ayotte says she's been clear on this issue for the last several weeks. In a statement to News 9, the governor said, quote, "Here in New Hampshire, we are making sure that families impacted by the shutdown have access to the support they need. I have made it clear that the politicians in Washington need to get their act together and reopen the government." In Concord, Adam Sexton, WMUR News 9.
Okay. So that's what they're saying on that side of the street. The Democrats are blaming the government or the Republicans. It's not. I don't know. The 25 states filed suit against Trump administration over its plan to withhold food aid under the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, arguing new law requires to provide funds for November. Benefits for 42 million Americans are due to run out on Saturday without funding. Senate conveys ahead of 11:30 a.m. vote. The Senate convened at 10 a.m. for speeches ahead of the 11:30 a.m. vote on advancing the bill to reopen the government. You can watch a live stream of the Senate floor in the video player at the top of this page. There it is right there, and I don't think we want to sit and watch the government argue back and forth, okay? You're welcome to. You're welcome to. And you can go to the link in the bottom of my description under CBS News and find this video, okay? Senator Josh Hawley, a Missouri Republican, wrote, and okay, we already read this when it came up on my phone while we were talking. So I don't know how I got that opened up already before it happened. Okay. So next we're going to go to the American Prospect. Everybody has something to say on everything, don't they? Okay, I just got my winter barefoot shoe and I love them. I love them. Okay, anyway. As shutdown wears on, Trump's getting blamed. As shutdown wears on, Trump's getting blamed. The longest government shutdown in American history was stopped because of a sick out, specifically in early 2019. Air Force controllers, after working for weeks without pay, started to call in sick in increasing numbers, leading to flight delays and travel snarls. Eventually, that got both parties to the table to halt the shutdown after 35 days. The air traffic controllers have recognized their power and decided to get going with things much earlier this time. Delays in Newark, Denver, Hollywood, Burbank, Nashville, and many other airports have been reported, even as the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, the employee union, has urged members to stop working from calling out sick. To stop workers calling out sick. The truth is that the air traffic controller workforce has already been thinned out as much as to such a degree that only a slight tick up in sick calls is enough to ground a lot of planes. It's going to get worse because funding for the essential air service which keeps the lights on at a lot of smaller airports, could run out by the end of this week. So if you want to get somewhere far away, you increasingly won't be able to do so. However, are bidders in government responding to this? How has the example of the consequences of their actions focused their mind? Well, President Trump called the Democrat delays, so I get used to hitchhiking across the country in the near future, or invest in a horse and buggy. There haven't been any shutdown talks for a week, just public posturing. Both sides think they are winning the shutdown, giving them no reason to initiate talks rather than just wait for the other side to buckle. In reality, Democrats are winning if you believe the polls, which have shown consistently that people are blaming Trump for the shutdown. It follows that they will blame Mr. Trump, not Democrats, for their air delays and other consequences. In fact, the Trump administration knows that because they have backed down from their initial strategy to impose maximum pain on Democrats during the shutdown, Russ Vought said he would begin mass layoffs in a day or two. 7 days ago, they still haven't happened, as officials decided they would have negative flowback. We do not want to appear gleeful about people losing their jobs, of course, said one administration official. You could have fooled me. Democrats aren't flinching at these threats because they know their BS and latest illegal threat that furloughed workers would not receive back pay after the shutdown as required by law has already been downplayed by Mr. Trump's own party. The whole shutdown has been like this. Benefit cuts for individuals were floated and then rejected. The Trump administration is more likely to find money illegally to fund federal benefits that are running out than to cut them. Similarly, there have been some grant reversals in the Trump administration has been doing that since day one. And contrary to the theory that they were surgically targeted against blue cities and states, they have spilled over into Republican areas as well. Okay. Now, we're going to go to the other side of the street to Congressman Kevin Mullen of California. Mullen says Republicans are to blame for the shutdown. Imagine that. A Democratic congressman blaming Republicans. Okay. Originally published on October 2nd, 2025 by the San Mateo Daily Journal and written by Holly Rush, as hundreds of thousands of federal workers are furloughed and some essential government services are shattered as part of a government shutdown that began Wednesday at 12:01 a.m. U.S. Representative Kevin Mullins, Democrat of South San Francisco, is maintaining the party that the Republicans are at fault. The shutdown comes as Senate Democrats refuse to give Republicans the necessary votes for a stopgap funding measure to keep governmental services open, citing Republican refusal to negotiate on extending Affordable Care Act healthcare subsidies. This is squarely on the Republicans in terms of who is responsible for this shutdown. Mullins said, the Republicans who control Congress and the White House have refused to negotiate in good faith, and Democrats are going to hold the line when it comes to health care. Okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry, but turning people transgender has nothing to do with healthcare, in my personal, unabided opinion. This reporter doesn't think mutilating your body should be a necessity to the U.S. government. If people want to do that, that's on themselves. That shouldn't be funded by the U.S. government, in my opinion. Now, I could be wrong. I have nothing against people who are transgender, transsexual, trans bipartisan. They could be animal magnetists. I don't know. I don't know. I have nothing against it. Don't put it on me. Don't make me try to be that way. But you do you. Okay? You do you. But don't make me pay for it. Okay? While some essential government services will remain, like the Postal Service, military function, and Social Security, Mullen said the White House has not been forthcoming about what functions will be affected. Yes, we've already read about that. Okay, here we go. This from Maryland Matters, okay? Those were not my words. Out of office messages changed for furlough Fed. Messages are latest examples where the Trump administration has used official channels to blame Democrats for the government fund down. Linden Johnson Department of Education. This is like a college. Furloughed staff at the U.S. Department of Education say out-of-office messages for their government emails accounts have been hijacked to include a message blaming the government shutdown on Senate Democrats. The new out-of-office message says Senate Democrats who did not vote for GOP-backed stopgap spending bill that would have kept the government funded through November 21st are responsible for the shutdown. We already read all this on another page. Okay, we already read that. So the Department of Education is covered. Okay, that's okay. Now here's one. We're getting somewhere now. Okay. Hey, they use cookies. I want cookies. Okay. What the federal government shutdown means for employers. Okay, I can tell you without reading this. This means if you are looking to find a job and your potential employer has to send off for a background check from you, it will be delayed unless the right words are put into the background check. So I've heard. On October 1st, 2025, the United States federal government entered a shutdown after congressional lawmakers failed to pass the resolution continuing funding the government. The shutdown will likely cause several disruptions for private employers, including late payment on contracts, disruptions or regulatory processes, and delays in projects. Here are some insights into federal agency shutdown contingency plans. Okay, private employers, that right there where it says it affects private employers, they're the ones that look for your background check. Okay, so that means you can't be hired by a school. You can't be hired by a box store, a chain box store, like Walmart, Goodwill. Well, you maybe buy Goodwill, but like Walmart, Dollar General, Family Dollar, Family Tree, those are all chain stores. You could not be hired by them if their store requires a background check. Okay? Quick hits. A federal government shutdown began October 1st. We already know that. Federal agencies have issued contingency plans to furlough staff while keeping some essential functions operating. While it is unclear how long the shutdown will last, private employers are likely to face disruptions regarding federal contracts, meaning your background checks, federal investigations, or other purposes, the federal project, which means your background checks, okay? And I apologize for that. It's not my fault. Congressional lawmakers had until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 30th to pass a funding resolution before operations for the federal government expired. Hours before the deadline, the White House Office of Management on Budget issued memorandum directing agencies to prepare for a federal government shutdown starting October 1st, 2025. Okay, we've already done the federal furloughs and the contingencies and that sort of stuff. But know that if you are searching employment and your employer has said you're basically hired, but we're waiting on your background check, you're going to be waiting a few days. And I apologize until this shutdown is over. And then it's going to take weeks to get caught up after that before they will say, yes, you're eligible to be hired. Even though you know your background's clear. You've done everything you need to do. You kept your nose clean. You're a good person. The government has to be able to say such a thing. Okay. Now we're going to go into DeWitt News. Excuse me. Sorry, we're closed. E-Verify, temporarily unavailable during government shutdown. E-Verify became unavailable at 12:01 a.m. on October 1st due to federal government shutdown. The sudden disruption impacts both employers and employees who depend on E-Verify for employment eligibility checks until Congress passes legislation to approve a new budget and reopen its general operations. E-Verify will stay inactive. The article summarizes the impact of the government shutdown on E-Verify operations. That's what we were just talking about. You can't get approved for eligibility checks until the government opens back up. Here's another one on background checks. Okay, this is from Mitratech. Background checks and I don't know why. Okay, background checks and the 2025 government shutdown delays data freshness and what you can do. Understand how the 2025 U.S. government shutdowns affects background checks, data freshness, and compliance, plus what you can do. When federal systems slow or stall, it can feel like the floor drops out from under your hiring process. E-Verify backlogs, federal records delay, and ticking clock on background checks. Data can leave even experienced HR teams wondering how to stay compliant without losing candidates. If you manage background screening programs, you might already be fielding worried questions from hiring managers to recruiters. We will still be able to onboard people or do our checks expire after 30 days. At moments like this, it helps to zoom out and understand which parts of the process are the most important. What temporarily delayed versus genuinely at risk, and how to protect both your compliance posture and your candidate experience in the meantime. Some verifications are moving slower, but the data isn't vanishing and your intelligence isn't undone. What matters now is clarity. knowing where the bottlenecks are, how long your data remains reliable, and how to keep your hiring operation steady until the system behind them fully recovers. Um, Matriarch Asher Hire background screening and other PBSA accredited vendors are running many services without interruption. Private databases such as county court records, state repository, education verified, and professional licensing boards are still functioning. Delays are mostly appearing in the federal level, where operations rely on furloughed employees by pausing funding. Systems like PACER used for federal criminal record searches, which is what is used in most background checks. Your employer wants to know what your criminal background record looks like. This is why you're being delayed. So, this is what the government is truly to blame if you are trying to get a job and your employer says, you basically have the job, we just can't get your background check back. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. So I thank you for being here. I hope you learned something important about the government shutdown. There's links to every page except for the one that popped up in my email. I didn't link to that one. But there's links to all the pages in my description below, and you're free to go and read all of the information you want to read about the government shutdown. And it's possible, since we do have a third person in here, it's possible that my son's government teacher came in to see what we're talking about. If you're in here, Mr. Government Teacher, please leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know if I did okay. All right. And you're welcome to use my information. I've already read it all. You can let me read it to your classmates, class members. All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with me for 1.25 hours. Do something nice for someone, even if it be the reason they smile, and search for growth. See you tomorrow.